Indian Rebellion of 1857. Other regions. Punjab. What was then referred to by the British as the Punjab was a very large administrative division, centered on Lahore. It included not only the present-day Indian and Pakistani Punjabi regions but also the northwest frontier districts bordering Afghanistan. Much of the region had been the Sikh Empire, ruled by Ranjit Singh until his death in 1839. The kingdom had then fallen into disorder, with court factions and the Khalsa contending for power at the Lahore Darbar. After two Anglo-Sikh wars, the entire region was annexed by the East India Company in 1849. In 1857, the region still contained the highest numbers of both British and Indian troops. The inhabitants of the Punjab were not as sympathetic to the sepoys as they were elsewhere in India, which limited many of the outbreaks in the Punjab to disjointed uprisings by regiments of sepoys isolated from each other. In some garrisons, notably Firozpur, indecision on the part of the senior British officers allowed the sepoys to rebel, but the sepoys then left the area, mostly heading for Delhi. At the most important garrison, that of Peshawar close to the Afghan frontier, many comparatively junior officers ignored their nominal commander, General Reid, and took decisive action. They intercepted the sepoys' mail, thus preventing their coordinating an uprising, and formed a force known as the Punjab Movable Column to move rapidly to suppress any revolts as they occurred. When it became clear from the intercepted correspondence that some of the sepoys at Peshawar were on the point of open revolt, the four most disaffected Bengal native regiments were disarmed by the two British infantry regiments in the cantonment, backed by artillery, on the 22nd of May. This decisive act induced many local chieftains to side with the British. Jhelum in Punjab saw a mutiny of native troops against the British. Here 35 British soldiers of Her Majesty's 24th Regiment of Foot were killed by mutineers on the 7th of July 1857. Among the dead was Captain Francis Spring, the eldest son of Colonel William Spring. To commemorate this event, St. John's Church, Jhelum was built and the names of those 35 British soldiers are carved on a marble lectern present in that church. The final large-scale military uprising in the Punjab took place on the 9th of July, when most of a brigade of sepoys at Sialkot rebelled and began to move to Delhi. They were intercepted by John Nicholson with an equal British force as they tried to cross the Ravi River. After fighting steadily but unsuccessfully for several hours, the sepoys tried to fall back across the river but became trapped on an island. 3 days later, Nicholson annihilated the 1,100 trapped sepoys in the Battle of Trimughat. The British had been recruiting irregular units from Sikh and Pakhtun communities even before the first unrest among the Bengal units, and the numbers of these were greatly increased during the rebellion, 34,000 fresh levies eventually being raised. At one stage, faced with the need to send troops to reinforce the besiegers of Delhi, the Commissioner of the Punjab suggested handing the coveted prize of Peshawar to Dost Muhammad Khan of Afghanistan in return for a pledge of friendship. The British agents in Peshawar and the adjacent districts were horrified. Referring to the massacre of a retreating British army in 1842, Herbert Edwardes wrote, "Dost Muhammad would not be a mortal Afghan if he did not assume our day to be gone in India and follow after us as an enemy. British cannot retreat, Kabul would come again." In the event, Lord Canning insisted on Peshawar being held, and Dost Muhammad, whose relations with Britain had been equivocal for over 20 years, remained neutral. In September 1858, Rai Ahmad Khankar, head of the Khurrul tribe, led an insurrection in the Neelibar district, between the Satluj, Ravi and Chenab rivers. The rebels held the jungles of Gogaira and had some initial successes against the British forces in the area, besieging Major Crawford Chamberlain at Chichawatni. A squadron of Punjabi cavalry sent by Sir John Lawrence raised the siege. Ahmed Khan was killed, but the insurgents found a new leader in Ma Bahawal Fatiana, who maintained the uprising for 3 months until government forces penetrated the jungle and scattered the rebel tribesmen. Bengal and Tripura. In September 1857, sepoys took control of the treasury in Chittagong. The treasury remained under rebel control for several days. Further mutinies on the 18th of November saw the 2nd, 3rd and 4th companies of the 34th Bengal Infantry Regiment storming the Chittagong jail and releasing all prisoners. The mutineers were eventually suppressed by the Gurkha regiments. The mutiny also spread to Kolkata and later Dakcha, the former Mughal capital of Bengal. Residents in the city's Lalba area were kept awake at night by the rebellion. Sepoys joined hands with the common populace in Jalpaiguri to take control of the city's cantonment. In January 1858, many sepoys received shelter from the royal family of the princely state of Hiltipara. The interior areas of Bengal proper were already experiencing growing resistance to company rule due to the Muslim Farezi movement. Gujarat. In central and north Gujarat, the rebellion was sustained by landowner Jagirdars, Talukdars and Thakars with the support of armed communities of Bhil, Koli, Pathans and Arabs, unlike the mutiny by sepoys in North India. Their main opposition of British was due to Inam Commission. The Bet Dwarka Island, along with Okhamandal region of Kathiawar Peninsula which was under Gaikwad of Baroda state, saw a revolt by the Waghas in January 1858 who, by July 1859, controlled that region. In October 1859, a joint offensive by British, Gaikwad and other princely states troops ousted the rebels and recaptured the region. British Empire. The authorities in British colonies with an Indian population, sepoy or civilian, took measures to secure themselves against copycat uprisings. In the Straits settlements in Trinidad, the annual Hosi processions were banned, riots broke out in penal settlements in Burma and the settlements in Penang. The loss of a musket provoked a near riot, and security was boosted especially in locations with an Indian convict population. Consequences of revolt. Death toll and atrocities. Both sides committed atrocities against civilians. In Oudh alone, some estimates put the toll at 150,000 Indians killed during the war, with 100,000 of them being civilians. The capture of Delhi, Allahabad, Kanpur and Lucknow by British forces were followed by general massacres. Another notable atrocity was carried out by General Neil, who massacred thousands of Indian mutineers and Indian civilians suspected of supporting the rebellion. The rebels' murder of British women, children and wounded soldiers at Kanpur and the subsequent printing of the events in the British papers left many British soldiers outraged and seeking revenge. As well as hanging mutineers, the British had some blown from cannon, in which sentenced rebels were tied over the mouths of cannons and blown to pieces when the cannons were fired. A particular act of cruelty on behalf of the British troops at Kanpur included forcing many Muslim or Hindu rebels to eat pork or beef, as well as licking buildings freshly stained with blood of the dead before subsequent public hangings. Practices of torture included searing with hot irons, dipping in wells and rivers till the victim is half suffocated, sequencing the testicles, putting pepper and red chilies in the eyes or introducing them into the private parts of men and women, prevention of sleep, nipping the flesh with pinners, suspension from the branches of a tree, imprisonment in a room used for storing lime. British soldiers also committed sexual violence against Indian women as a form of retaliation against the rebellion. As towns and cities were captured from the sepoys, the British soldiers took their revenge on Indian civilians by committing atrocities and rapes against Indian women. As one account reads, the British victors retaliated against the civilians at Fatehpur by sacking villages, raping women, killing children and hanging hundreds of men. When the people of Kanpur heard this, they feared similar retaliation. At Fatehgarh, for example, when the English defeated the enemy, their officers ordered a mass-scale killing of the rebels and the citizens on the spot. General Neil had also ordered hanging parties. No evidence was sought and none given before executing the victim. When the 78th Highlanders moved to another village, they caught about 140 men, women and children. They selected 60 men from the group, forced them to build the gallows of wooden logs taken from the burning homes. They then chose 10 men of the group and hanged them without any evidence or trial. For others, they had reserved flogging and beating to teach them a lesson. At one of the villages, about 2,000 villagers armed only with their lathis, wooden canes, turned out in protest. They stood up to face the 78th Highlanders. The British troops surrounded them and set their village on fire. The villagers trying to escape were shot to death. One soldier describes the incident thus: "We took 18 of them prisoners, they were all tied together, and we fired a volley at them and shot them on the spot." Stringing and shooting the men in front of their family was a sport the troops enjoyed. Watching women stooping and begging for the lives of their men seemed to thrill the young soldiers and their officers. The prisoners were made to stand under the hot summer sun for hours till they fainted. It was easy to flog them when they were half conscious, otherwise, they would squirm and make it hard to strike. Flogging invariably ended in killing of the victims. The English wanted to break the faith of their Hindu and Muslim prisoners. Most of the British press, outraged by the stories of alleged rape committed by the rebels against British women, as well as the killings of British civilians and wounded British soldiers, did not advocate clemency of any kind towards the Indian population. Governor-General Canning ordered moderation in dealing with native sensibilities and earned the scornful sobriquet Clemency Canning from the press and later parts of the British public. In terms of sheer numbers, the casualties were much higher on the Indian side. A letter published after the fall of Delhi in the Bombay Telegraph and reproduced in the British press testified to the scale of the Indian casualties. All the city's people found within the walls of the city of Delhi when our troops entered were bayoneted on the spot, and the number was considerable, as you may suppose, when I tell you that in some houses 40 and 50 people were hiding. These were not mutineers but residents of the city, who trusted to our well-known mild rule for pardon. I am glad to say they were disappointed. From the end of 1857, the British had begun to gain ground again. Lucknow was retaken in March 1858. On the 8th of July 1858, a peace treaty was signed and the rebellion ended. The last rebels were defeated in Gwalior on the 20th of June 1858. By 1859, rebel leaders Bakht Khan and Nana Sahib had either been slain or had fled. Edward Wibbert, a 19-year-old officer whose parents, younger brothers, and 2 of his sisters had died in the Cawnpur massacre, recorded his experience. The orders went out to shoot every soul. It was literally murder. I have seen many bloody and awful sights lately, but such a one as I witnessed yesterday I pray I never see again. The women were all spared, but their screams on seeing their husbands and sons butchered were most painful. Heaven knows I feel no pity, but when some old grey-bearded man is brought and shot before your very eyes, hard must be that man's heart, I think, who can look on with indifference. Some British troops adopted a policy of no prisoners. One officer, Thomas Lowe, remembered how on one occasion his unit had taken 76 prisoners. They were just too tired to carry on killing and needed a rest, he recalled. Later, after a quick trial, the prisoners were lined up with a British soldier standing a couple of yards in front of them. On the ordered fire, they were all simultaneously shot, swept from their earthly existence. The aftermath of the rebellion has been the focus of new work using Indian sources and population studies. In The Last Mughal, historian William Dalrymple examines the effects on the Muslim population of Delhi after the city was retaken by the British and finds that intellectual and economic control of the city shifted from Muslim to Hindu hands because the British, at that time, saw an Islamic hand behind the mutiny. Approximately 6,000 of the 40,000 British living in India were killed.